This is Purdue running back Tyrone Tracy.
I think he's the shiftiest running back in the draft class. We don't know what to do with him because he just started playing running back. Actually, a crazy story about Tyrone Tracy. He was a wide receiver at Purdue, was not all that productive. And then his running back coach was just daring him to switch positions as a redshirt senior. He said, that's the only way you're going to make it to the league. He committed to that, which is very cool for him to do, and immediately super successful. Number 2 in EPA per carry, 49% success rates, also rock solid. And then he forced a missed tackle on 30% of his touches. That is super impressive stuff. Out in space, he is super elusive. But for somebody that's brand new to the position, I thought he was actually a hold up in his contact balance. And obviously he's got plenty enough speed as well. So 24 years old, don't love that. Only 1 year of minimal production, don't love that. But based on the tape, this is like Mr. Sleeper of the Year.
Yeah, there is a lot to love. And it wasn't just at Purdue he was a wide receiver. He was a pass catcher for 3 years at Iowa, the same Iowa team that had Sam Laporta and Charlie Jones and a few other dudes, and they still couldn't put up points on the board. Some other numbers that are just fantastic: 5'11", 209, 4'4", 840, 153 10-yard split, 94th percentile vert, 83rd percentile broad jump, 89th percentile 3-cone, and Hayden, his advanced stats, when you dig below the surface, they are almost legendary. Of the 344 players in college football last year with 100-plus carries, Tyrone Tracy was 4th in missed tackles forced per attempt at 0.42 and 11th in yards after contact per attempt. Like, we aren't just talking about great running back metrics for this draft class and creating yards on his own. We're talking all of college football this past season. And that was all despite only getting 1.8 yards handed to him before contact per attempt on average. 71% of his yards were created on his own. And you see it when watching his tape. The way that he is able to stay up on contact, and for a singular season of playing running back on so many of these Purdue carries that asked him to run laterally, it wasn't, I'm just going to drift to the sideline and hope to turn the corner. It was, I'm going to put my foot in the dirt, find this tiny little crease to burst up the field, and then against too high, somehow split both safeties and run right past him. His film was so much fun to watch.
I'd also see him just kind of like shed off linebacker tackles at the second level as well. So it's super dynamic out there. Like you said, I did not ever see him dance too much, bounce things outside. He was actually very disciplined, and he's very clearly has fresh legs. Even though he is 24 years old, he has like 115 touches or carries out there. So I think that he's going to go in there and be an explosive weapon for them. I think there's a chance that he just stays as like a classic running back, because in his limited touches last year, I thought he was like very good at like the running back type of stuff, which was super interesting. So I have him inside my top 10 running backs. I have him an early round 4 grade, right outside the top 100. I'm not sure where he's going to go because he is so old, but man, his film was fantastic. I think a lot of people are going to compare him to Antonio Gibson, who had a very similar kind of archetype. I thought Antonio Gibson was far less disciplined than Tyrone Tracy as a running back. He's got about the same exact athletic profile as Chris Evans, who has kind of popped around with the Bengals, but I think that Tyrone Tracy is more accomplished as a runner than Chris Evans. I think there's a chance he could be somewhat like Tony Pollard, who's actually a very similar size and speed. Now, Tony Pollard is a fantastic running back. We'll see if Tyrone Tracy could develop into that. But man, the shiftiness is real. His contact balance is real. The size is real. Everything about this, except for just the volume of touches that he's had, is very real.
I thought he was unafraid of finishing with a forward lean and on contact. He didn't always pick up short yardage situations, but I don't think it was due to a lack of effort. I think he's very much willing to get in the dirt, get muddy, in the trash over the middle of the field. My comparisons are even up a notch compared to yours, okay? I've been doing this for a while, so I remember David Johnson coming out of Northern Iowa as almost this raw athlete who, during his first year with Bruce Arians in Arizona, Bruce Arians basically wanted nothing to do with him, put him on kick return. He would go back there and return a few, and then every once in a while he would get opportunities. And then like a couple years later led the NFL basically in yards at the position. I'm not saying that Tyrone Tracy is going to do that, but coming from the same running style, the somehow 209 pounds, but also looking slender at the exact same time, and then just galloping beyond people. Our buddy Brett Coleman just posted a Cordero Patterson comparison, which is very apt from the wide receiver to running back and also the creativity and the contact balance as a runner. And then heck, Hayden, I think as a rookie, if he doesn't get a full workload, I could see him having a Tajay Spears-esque impact of creating explosive plays. And I was a massive Tajay Spears fan heading into last year's class. So like you can even do some of the jet sweep stuff with him too. The push passes get him in motion. And in fact, as weird as it sounds, I thought the receiving aspect of his game this past season was far less desirable, far less memorable than the rushing aspects that we saw in his lone season, his one season of ever being a running back.
And I think that's a good thing, not a bad thing, that he wasn't just like manufactured guy. Like he was actually doing all the stuff. Those guys that you comp to obviously would be a massive smash if he was able to do that. Those guys seem a little bigger than what Tyrone Tracy is, but at the same time, maybe he puts on a couple pounds here just because he's new to the position. So I would not be surprised if he ended up as one of the very best running backs in the class. Obviously, his range of outcomes are massive. You can go to the NFL, not get a good grasp of things, and be out of the league very quickly. He also just has the athletic traits that I'm looking for in my running backs as well. So I listened to some interviews. They were fantastic. Just loved listening to his perspective. Obviously, the crazy path to even get here, but my prediction, I think that he's going to last, man. Like there's just something about his tape that in this class where like, I'm just kind of seeing some very clear pros, some very, very clear weaknesses for all these running backs. I think that he's kind of got the best blend of kind of having a lot of pros and like really not that many weaknesses on tape. Obviously, his whole profile is weird, but on tape, I didn't see like very clear weaknesses.
And I do want to repeat, he turns 25 at the end of November, and age can be viewed in a few different ways, especially at this class, the quarterback position. You know, physical development, and maybe that's the case here with skill positions, wide receivers and running backs, where, and I know we have transfers and NIL and all this stuff, but a 24-year-old is going to be more physically developed than 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds that he is facing off against. But what you're talking about with interviews, there's also a massive mental maturity on top of it, which probably allowed him and helped him learn on the fly a totally new position. But just think of how different you were as a 19-year-old versus a 24-year-old, you know, like your brain development, your understanding and awareness of everything around you is so much greater. I will add on top of that 0 under center runs, but that's not to say that Purdue didn't force him to work in the middle of the field in a conference that does still play a lot of traditional style football. Like he went up against Michigan and you just saw him slalom ski between first, second, and third level defenders on that Michigan Wolverines defense. He is one of my favorite players in this class.
Oh yeah.
Bar none. And I understand the red flags of his age, and sure, you can say it's just one productive season, but just wonder if he played running back a bit earlier on, I guarantee you we would see more productive seasons than this.
And despite the age, I think that with running backs, it's equally as important as the age. It's just the amount of hits that you've taken. I think that's why we have this age cliff, which I really think is like more of a carries cliff. And Tyrone Tracy has the freshest legs in the draft class. He's never been tackled basically because of his profile before all this. So being old is a huge red flag, but I think that it's going to work against him a little bit less just because he does seem so damn fresh. By far, my favorite surprise player when I turned on the tape was not expecting this. So many times these guys that are touted as sleepers that are these weird profiles, you watch them and immediately you're like, no, you're Izzy Abandakanda. Tyrone Tracy's got a little something to him that was very real. I think like everyone wants Malachi Corley to be this fun, darling, manufactured touch guy and athletic. Tyrone Tracy is that at the running back position, but actually has it.
He does have work to do in pass pro, which is not a concern. His initial contact is a lunge. I thought he struggled at times to mirror and sustain. But at the same time, I thought he was quite good at identifying and being willing to pick up these free rushers. Again, we talked about these defenses that they faced. He was very readily identifying those guys, working inside and out and finding those free defenders. I want him to work.
I know.
I could see a team falling in love with him and taking him in round 3 and just being like, hey, none of the other running backs in this class offer this. They might have seen like what Rachaad White did last season and say, hey, we can replicate that a little bit here with Tyrone Tracy. Just such a fun play. Did you go back and watch his Iowa wide receiver stuff at all?
No, I did not.
I did.
You?
I think it's a smart move. They moved to running back.
Sure. I mean,
He was trying to run
passes
slant
a game. Yeah.
and kind of clap at the football. But he did also run. He was an X receiver, Hayden. He was an isolated outside wide receiver doing this stuff.
What a guy.
And he was running kind of corner routes to the sideline and doing a pretty good job on those. I will say, I wouldn't be shocked if we see, like Malachi Corley, who was a former running back wide receiver, if we see the inverse maybe moving forward, because I wouldn't be surprised if kids, middle schoolers, high schoolers gravitate more towards wide receiver than they used to as running backs. And I wouldn't be surprised again if we do see more and more of these wide receiver to running back conversions at the college level, just out of necessity. And maybe Tyrone Tracy is one of the first of those.
That's really interesting. At the last seconds, make the switch over because everybody wants to play wide receiver.
Cordero Patterson.
We still need running backs.
We still need running backs. All right. Speaking of, go and watch the rest of the prospect videos we have on the channel. We have wide receivers. We have running backs. We have quarterbacks. We have a tight end. If you made it this point on this one, you will do the same on the next one. We'll see you there.